Okay. Well, welcome to another Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and Rise Presses. And I am here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time, typically along with a few of our editors and acquisition editors. And we're here to answer any kind of questions that you may have. Your questions can be about anything. It can be about the craft of writing, the business of writing. Um, why is my hair red? Why are Ben, Peter, and Cody the acquisition editors? What drives us to, are we fans of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? I don't know. Hey, ask whatever. Hence the ask us anything. So, uh, yeah, just go for it. And how you actually get to ask the questions is that in whatever form you're in, YouTube, um, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, just go ahead and pop your question into the comments section. And then I'll repeat the question. And then typically, we take turns in responding to those questions. Now, if you are watching this and it is not Thursday between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time or 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time, this is not a big deal. You can just go ahead, toss your question into the comments section because we all actually do regularly monitor this to see if there are any new questions that have come forward. And then what we do is we respond to those questions in the subsequent week. Now, we have been doing this amazing offer that for whomever asks the coolest, most interesting, most captivating question, we will give you your choice of the paperback novel from our catalogs. So, which I think is pretty cool. It's kind of a fun. It is. It's a fun giveaway. So, with that, again, I just want to offer up, guys, go ahead, ask whatever you may so choose to ask, and we will be happy to respond. So, to give some catch up on activities from this previous week, I have actually been working on this phenomenal fantasy novel that I really am looking forward to getting out to you guys. I think you are going to find it super, super exciting. Hey, Margaret, awesome to see you. And it's one of those that I think should really break some grounds in a variety of ways. Hey, Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How's your week been?
Nice. Things are slowing down a little bit of work. Able to get some more work done on the novel I'm editing and the one I'm writing. So things are going pretty swell.
Excellent. Excellent. That's awesome. I for those who may not be aware, Peter has owed me a novel for a while now. And so my favorite thing to do is basically harass him and just say, "All right. Where is it? Hand
It's
it
coming.
over."
It's coming along. It's coming along.
Excellent. Very, very cool. So I was just saying that I'm editing a novel that I'm really excited to get out to everybody. It's like more of a fantasy novel. Um, and yeah, I think she does some stuff in it that I think readers are really, really, really going to love. So, and
Cool.
I just had the kickoff for the Cure anthology, and everyone seemed pretty stoked to get started. Sorry, I'm like getting all these texts all of a sudden, and so I just turned my phone over so I won't keep looking at it. Um, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. We've got 11 stories that were accepted that will be included, and all written within the world of Cure. So,
Wow.
uh, yeah, it's very cool to. It'll. We got about 20 total, so it'll be fun to work with them with those authors on the different works. So,
And these are short stories, not novellas.
right, these are short stories. Exactly. Yep.
Very cool.
Rod Gilly says, "Hey guys, hey Rod, as always, awesome to see you." Um, and then I'm actually working on the novella anthology for both. Well, for Cure or not for Cure. the novella anthology for Running Wild. So that one, I really want to get everything done with the novel, and then do a hard dive into the novella anthology. So
Aren't you working on one for Rise as well, or did you get that one done?
I've been messaging with Cody to ask him, like, how does he want us to cover it? So we might co-edit it.
Oh, neat.
I'm
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna meet with him next week to figure that out. So
Cool.
yeah. Caroline says, "Great to see you, Lisa and Peter." Caroline, is always fabulous to see you as well. Yeah. So, and actually, the slight correction, I still have to go through and accept, like, formally accept by contract the novellas for the Running Wild anthology, but it's not. It's the anthology that'll come out in 2025, so it's
Oh,
not like, yeah,
got a couple weeks.
yeah. We have some time, so it should be totally fine.
Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm wrestling a little bit with the novel that I've been working on. Questions that I've got. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was written. The author's from the Netherlands, I believe, and his writing is really interesting. It's just the country shift. I don't know if he did the translation himself or just had to do AI do it for him. But there's some odd language within the story that I'm having to work on. I'm pretty much having to stop almost every paragraph to ask a question to see what's going on with this. What is this? You know, and common phrases to him have no relevance to me. So I'm asking, oh, this is really neat. What does it look like? Kind of thing. So then some certain mannerisms and diction, it's just very interesting to learn to see. I'm thinking about having a call with him just to see what's going on, where he's coming from, so that I can better understand the story as I go forward. And I may even do copy Ben's formulas, edit about half, send that to him, and then start working on or finish the second half.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've actually gotten a lot more international submissions.
Really?
Yeah, like in the novella and the short story anthologies, we've had a lot of international submissions. And some, to your point, it seems like they use some kind of AI, because it's a literal translation, and it doesn't quite work because there's idioms from that language that just don't translate well.
Right.
So you have no idea. In some cases, you don't know what's going on. In other cases, you can kind of figure it out. Meanwhile, other people, it's, they just misuse a word here and there, and that's not a big deal. So
yeah, that's not this. This case is all all on its own.
Yeah.
It's omnipotent and it goes all over the place. And I'm trying to follow the story, but I don't know the nationality. I don't know what their storytelling is like. So I'm kind of riding along as best I can. But yeah, I've never seen so many adverbs in a story in my life. Ever.
Oh.
Yeah. Cried loudly, put this down emotionally. I mean, what does put this down emotionally mean? I don't.
Yeah.
So questions.
Got it. Understood. Yeah, and actually, that's something, it's interesting, because when we talk about translation and like audiobook, like audio book being translated into an audiobook, into another language, I've always kind of had so many questions around that, because it's not like there's Spanish, right? There's like Puerto Rican Spanish, there's Cuban Spanish, there's Spain Spanish, just to name a few, and they all have their own like variations and complexities, and so it's like how do they handle that?
That's a good question. I have no idea.
I mean, same with French, same with Italian, and honestly, pick a language, right?
Yeah.
And just depending on the region you're in, it can vary significantly. So, I mean, even English, right? Because you got American English, England English, in all honesty, like Irish English.
Well, there's Southern English, Northeast English, Western English. I mean, it's all the same language, but it's got its own colloquialisms.
Right, exactly. And which isn't, like, if it's within context of the story, right, it enriches the story, so that's great. But if it's just like, sorry, I'm dog sitting, and stop it. No, I'm not here to play with you. Like the second I get on a call, one of the dogs decides it's playtime, and she's really, really smart. The first call I got on, somehow she figured out how to wrap her head around the wire of my headphones and pull it off of me. And I was like, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" At
Mm-hmm.
first it was hilarious. And then I'm like, after that, like, I mean, she's obedient. Don't get me wrong. It's just that she's excited. Like, yay, you're here. Let's go
So one of the
play.
how many dogs are you dog sitting? 4
Yeah.
plus your cats. That's got to
No,
be.
I'm at their house.
Oh,
So
yeah. Okay.
yeah, no, that would be no, that wouldn't.
Bedlam.
That would, yeah, my cat. Well, two of the dogs are on the older side, and
Mm-hmm.
so they're more just like, "Yay, okay, I'm gonna go into a corner and curl up
Sleep.
into a ball and yeah, right, and tell me
Mm-hmm.
when it's food time." And the two that are rambunctious also happen to be the really big ones, like over 50 pounds, kind of
Oh,
big. Yeah, and like there are the dog barriers, the gates.
oh
They
yeah.
can I'm like, "Why do you even have these?" They just jump over them. I
Oh wow.
mean, yeah. But luckily if they jump over and I'm like, "No," then they're like, "Oh, oh, you were serious. You really don't want me in this room right now. Okay." And then they'll just like go off and hang out somewhere else or jump back. So,
Cool.
yeah,
Well,
it's
always
very
an
funny.
adventure.
So yeah, so I apologize because we may get interrupted here and there by an overeager dog. So,
If you start signaling and shouting into the void over there, we'll understand what's going on.
yes, exactly. Exactly. So, or you may see a face suddenly come after my face to like lick me, which is always interesting. Rod Gilly says, let's not forget Kentucky English. That's
True.
true. That is very, or like Alabama in, I don't know,
Alabama, yeah.
Alabama, yeah, yeah, or yeah, New Orleans counts in that. Caroline says there are worse things to be interrupted by. I completely agree. I much rather. I mean, the whole reason I'm here is because the dogs trust me and the owners trust me. So, um, it's much better to be in a place where the dogs trust you and they want to be around you than when they don't. Like that's a whole nother woo. And thankfully, I've rarely experienced that. It's usually a dog that's known for just not liking human beings. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
but 4 makes it interesting.
Yeah, 4 makes it interesting. Well, you have one, right?
I have down to my last dog. Yep. He's 14 years old, still thinks he's a puppy. He's a lab mix, just happy as can be. He's just slowing down. He's about 75 pounds, so he's a big dog, but
Mm,
he's still healthy and hanging in there. So as long as he's happy.
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awesome to me.
Yep.
Yeah, the only reason we don't have a dog in my house is because I don't think my cat basically scared off her brother where he ran away. So I
Oh,
can't even imagine what would happen if we brought in a dog. Yeah.
cat's kind of territorial, huh?
Oh yeah. Yep. And what's funny is she's one of those like don't pick her up. She hates being picked up, but when she wants to be on your lap, god damn it, that is what needs to happen.
That's the black cat that's always crawling around your desk, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Rod says, I love doggies. We always get along. I think because I'm just a mutt myself. I couldn't be much of a dog watcher. I would surely lead the dogs to mischief. Well, I didn't say I didn't do that. I just said that I'm watching dogs. That's two different
Yep.
things. Yeah. So,
Cool.
anyway, um, so Peter, is there anything like, are there any kind of stories that you're like, are your absolute favorites in terms of, well, anything, theme, writing style,
Whoa, that's a $4 question.
right?
Yeah.
Or that you feel like where influenced you the most?
I really enjoyed the flow of All the Light We Cannot See.
Mm.
That's a really good story. The pace for Junot Diaz's The Brief, Incredible, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. Brief, Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde was really cool. The pace and the language that he used. And actually, I took a class by with the woman who translated that from English into Spanish.
Wow.
And she's like, she would talk to him. She's like, "What does this word mean?" And he would literally go, "I don't know. I just kind of made that one up." I'm going, "What? How am I supposed to translate this?" And just kind of shrug his shoulders, like, "Do your best."
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that's an interesting story.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm unable to really get into the latest Cormac McCarthy novel. It's all over the place, and one of the stories just makes absolutely no sense to me at this time. So that's kind of put to the side. I've got other books. I've always got other books. I picked up this the other day. Which lie did I tell about film writing?
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So still reading, still writing. Had a good night writing last night, so that's good.
That's awesome.
About time. I actually felt something about what I was writing about, as opposed to like, well, she did this and she did this. Like, God, it drives me crazy when I do that.
Oh, yeah, but we all do that. I mean,
I know.
It gets you to the point where you can then really feel it. So
exactly. But when the first draft has got to be shit, like it's a long first draft in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it can be.
Sweet time. Yep.
Yeah. That's all right. You'll get there. I have no doubt.
I know. I've written 3 or 4 novels already, so
there you go.
It's just just takes time and work.
Yeah.
What about you? What's about some of your favorite writing?
I mean, I think the first novel that really resonated with me was The Count of Monte Cristo when I was in school.
Okay. I like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like a huge Bluest Eye fan. Also a huge Junot Diaz fan. Oh my gosh, it's honestly, you could probably pick a genre, and I could probably, well, as long as I can get through the filing cabinet of my brain to remember all the books that I love, but there's probably at least one, if not multiple, authors and styles that I could point to and say, oh, I adored this. So
I mean, I've got bookshelves behind me that I can just reach and pick any book up at random and tell you what it's about.
Oh yeah. Well, like there was a period where I pretty much read every National Book Award winner that came out. And because they're so well written, and they're not, none of them are commonplace. Like they all bring something fascinating, both from a narrative perspective as well as various craft elements that are used.
Right.
So it's from a nerdy writer perspective, right?
That's our perspective, though.
That's our perspective, yeah. Meantime, Pulitzers sometimes I have a hard time getting into because they're there to make a statement, and so sometimes it takes you a while to get to the point of like what that statement is. So
yeah, for several years I tried to read every Pulitzer that came out, and they just got more experimental and more off the wall, and I'm still wanting to pick them up, to read them, to have them, but sometimes I just can't quite get it. Maybe I'm too mainstream, maybe I'm too literary, but so when they don't make sense, they don't make sense. And I'm not about to read it 5 times to get at the kernel of truth there, which, I'm sure is fascinating and worth the reading, but I've got 1,000 books that I want to read through.
Right. Yeah. I honestly, I haven't tried in ages. I haven't tried to read a Pulitzer in ages, just because it just got to a point where I was like, I just don't, not that I don't understand it. I don't want to put in the work to get me to the point where I care about the story. And I can't remember which novel it was, but there was one that it just got to a point where I'm like, you're just using big words to use big words. There's no purpose to this.
Right.
So I'm not going to keep reading. So
yeah.
Caroline asks, did you like Norman Mailer, either of you? Just curious, as I read everything he and others of his time read. I have not read Norman Mailer in so long. I want to say, yes, I did enjoy Norman Mailer. Caroline, what's your favorite Norman Mailer, since you put that out there? And like, who are your favorite authors from that period? Actually, I think that's kind of reflected in your writing, now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, duh. Of course it would be.
Just going through to see what books he's written.
Mm.
It's from Harvard.
Well,
Naked and the Dead, Armies of the Night, Executioner Song. Okay. Yeah, heavy tones.
Rod says, "Hey Peter, sometimes a simple little book of short stories can be very enjoyable. Like, say, for a random example, the hero, the fear, and the date. I don't know. Who do you think wrote that, Rod?" And yes, he's like, "No, I'm not naughty." You are so beyond naughty, it's not even funny. Caroline says, "Wondering if people now go back and read so many of the greats." I would have to say, his first book on the Democratic election. Okay, interesting. I, like Peter, I have a library of books that I've read that there was something about it that really resonated with me, so I kept it. And I have a pile of books on my bedside, so that I still want to read, and I'm like getting into. My problem is I'll get 2, 3, 4 books into my pile of books, feel accomplished, and then goober me will go to a library, or I'll go someplace and someone recommends a couple of stories, and I go out and buy, like, double the number of books that I actually managed to finish. So, yeah.
Mm.
But go ahead.
Oh, to completely go against what I just said, reading a book for the second time or the third time really does enrich the experience. But when you're talking about these long classics and everything, it's just there's just too many books to be read. So,
well, like, I just picked back up Blade Runner, which I read, I want to say, in after high school, something like that. And it's interesting because I realized there's a lot of the opening that I skimmed at the time, because it's a very hardcore sci-fi in the opening. And at the time I wasn't that into sci-fi, but I understand now that I've, read it, what he's doing by having the opening done that way, if that makes sense. So now it's like, oh, okay, I got it. Like, I understand the whole intent of the intention of, having these paradigms of human beings versus like AI, or computer driven entities. So Rod says, "I recently read my first ever H.P. Lovecraft story, The Color Out of Space. Man, it could be a text on writing atmosphere. Have you ever read it?" Well, since Peter just looked at his pile of books behind him, I'm going to say yes. No?
No.
That's another one. I'm pretty sure I read it ages ago. To Peter's point, I do often, like, there are so many books to read today, and there are so many amazing authors just doing fantastic things. I don't often go back and reread a story. That said, sometimes someone will reference, a classic, and I'll go back and pick it up because I want to have the experience that they had when they read that classic in context of whatever it is that we were discussing. Which, honestly, that's why I'm reading Blade Runner, because somebody had referenced that it was like his first ever favorite sci-fi novel, and when he first read it, he read it like 3 times. It's pretty brief. It's a short, you could argue that it's a novella. So yeah. Actually, there are several classics that you could argue are novellas, but
oh yeah, Old Man and the Sea.
A
couple others.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, for those of you who are watching, or you're skimming through your list of various things that are going down on social media, and you happen upon this, We are Run Wild with us, Ask Us Anything. And we are here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern time. And we are the editors and acquisition editors for Running Wild and Rise Presses, which, if you haven't heard from us, or heard of us rather, I think you should probably look us up. We've won lots of awards, gotten tons of starred reviews, been really, really blessed in having so many fantastic authors to work with. And, definitely check it out. So if I were you, I would take this opportunity to ask us whatever the hell you want. And I mean that seriously. You can totally ask us. We're pretty open unless you ask us something inane, and then we may get snarky, but hey. Rod says, because I like you so much, I'll not mention L. Ron Hubbard's Battlefield Earth. Great story, but over 1,000 pages. Well, that's unusual.
I read that. I read that a while ago in high school.
Oh, yeah?
And he's right, it's like 1,100 and some pages or something. I mean, it is really a tome. It's thick.
Wow.
It's interesting. It ebbs and flows, so the story goes along. And I mean, if a teenager can keep up with it, then it's a decent enough story.
Yeah.
I didn't know who he was when I picked the book up, and I figured out who he was and what he did and what that turned into. And I'm like, okay, we're just gonna put this down over there and not look at it anymore. And the movie adaptation with John Travolta was just abysmal.
Oh, yeah.
I remember.
I was gonna say Battlefield Earth was a film, so I never saw it personally, but Caroline asks, what are your favorites of the classics, Lisa and Peter?
I'm going to throw this one to you, Lisa, first, because you put me on the spot a little bit ago.
Fine. So definitely Count of Monte Cristo, of the classics. Bluest Eye. Actually, it kind of depends on how we define classics, to be honest. Let me see.
Red Badge of Courage was good. Old Man of the Sea, like I just mentioned.
Yeah. I actually liked Pride and Prejudice. I was one of those weirdos. I pretty much liked everything. Almost everything. I got annoyed because I switched schools a couple times, and they kept assigning me the same damn books, like Animal Farm. And I was like, I don't need to read this again. And they were like, well, yes, you do. And my whole argument was, you're having me read this because you want me to write a bunch of essays because it was for your summer reading.
Right.
And it's going to be the same damn essays as the essays from the previous school. So I think they went out of their way to make sure that they were quite different. But
did you turn in the same essays you wrote before, though?
No.
No?
No, I actually did write new ones. I actually enjoyed the original Bram Stoker Dracula. To Kill a Mockingbird, Scarlet Letter,
Gatsby,
Alice in Wonderland, Frankenstein. Yeah, The Great Gatsby is technically a novella.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I'm just like going. There's a list on BarnesandNoble.com. I enjoyed Shakespeare. That's another one, though. I mean, for obvious reasons, it takes a little bit to get into, but
I've been to some Shakespeare plays where the dialogue was so clear, you understood exactly what was going on. But then you look at the script and you're in your book, you're like, this is the same as that, but I can't make sense of this.
Yeah.
When it's done right, when it's directed well, I mean, it is English that you can pick up on and understand. It just flows like a river. It's really nice when it's done well.
Yeah, agreed. Treasure Island. I mean, what kid doesn't like Treasure Island?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually enjoyed Huckleberry Finn more than I enjoyed Tom Sawyer. But so I don't know. How about you, Peter?
Oh, I just been throwing up titles like as long as while you've been talking. So I don't think I ever got through Huckleberry Finn. I read about half of it up to the fence painting scene,
Mhm.
which I thought was just classic. And I've read several other of his short stories, which are phenomenal. Can't name any of them right now, of course, because I'm on the spot. But
Yeah, of course not.
Mark
That's
Twain's
how
a
it works.
great author. um, let's see, other classics, like I was saying before. Red Badge of Courage, like I mentioned. I mean, I can make, if you give me half an hour, I can make a list. But right now, my brain's like, I just had dinner, everything's smooth.
Oh, I'm having dinner later tonight, so I don't quite have the hunger headache going on, but like you can kind of sense it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I'm writing
Uh,
down all the books that people are listing, which is, I think that's really cool.
that is very cool. Uh, Caroline says more accurate, maybe. More accurate, great writers. Rod says, I love We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and even though I'm all about horror and such, I love Romeo and Juliet. That's cool. Cree says, bonjour. Bonjour, Cree. Always good to see you. Caroline says, either of you ever read Marianne Wiggins or John Dollar? I don't know. Let me look them up. Let's see. Marianne Wiggins. So she wrote. Oh, she's married to Salman Rushdie, or was. I am definitely a big fan of Salman Rushdie, admittedly. So she wrote Properties of Thirst, John Dollar. Oh, I see. So John Dollar was the book. The Shadow Catcher. I actually don't think I've ever read any of her work. I'll have to check that out. Thank you for the tip.
Definitely.
Rod says, I have the 1968 Olivia Hussey film in my collection. It's amazing. Oh, okay. Cool. Very cool. Wow, so many great stories out there. Oh, and read John Dollar. Okay, that will have to be added to my bedside table. I will be sure to read John Dollar. It's an interesting name though, which I mean obviously that's the whole point, but yeah.
Marianne Wiggins is kind of fun too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
The Wiggins part.
Yeah. No. No. I know. I know you're adorable. Yes, and you give kisses, but no. And it's they take turns. Like one will come up like, okay, I'll get her to do something, and then when they don't, then the next one comes up. Okay, I'll get her to go. And then they both like plop down behind me when they realize, oh, I guess that means she's not going to play. I know. Oh goodness, dogs are fun.
So I got a question for Rod. You like Stephen King horror or Clive Barker horror?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I'd say Stephen King is more like suspense.
Suspense, yeah. He's not my favorite author. I've mentioned that before, but he does sell, and the suspense in his stories really keeps you on edge. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, and Clive is more like down and out, kill 'em
Horror,
all.
scary shit. Yeah, just yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
So,
But yeah, I personally lean toward Stephen King, but I haven't read Stephen King in ages, to be honest. But
he just got a story published in Esquire in the latest issue.
oh, cool.
I'm gonna read that. Kick back to when short stories were in magazines.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. He had a period where he was incredibly prolific, and then he seemed to sort of disappear for a while. So
yeah.
Rod says both are great, but I gotta say, Pet Cemetery is a fantastic story. I got the MC Hall audio and seriously got cold chills. Oh,
I don't know who N.T. Hall is, but I think an audio of that book would give anyone chills. With the cat coming out of the graveyard a couple days later, I mean, that's just like that that woke me up.
Right? It was like, well, wait a minute. How's that possible? At first, like, wait, how's that Oh.
It's okay, a little patchy, a little missing skin here and there, but she's still a cat.
It's like, okay. Yep, totally. And then, yeah, and then how he kind of unwinds what the Pet Cemetery is really doing and what those animals are, actually about is like, oh my God. Yeah. So yeah, back to that whole suspense thing. It's funny. I saw someone on Facebook recently commented she didn't like one of a film that was adapted from a Stephen King novel, and I thought, well, he didn't have anything to do with that. The novel's not identical to the film, right? That's those. I mean, technically speaking, you could argue it's two different beasts, but yeah.
I heard the only film that he really likes that was an adaptation of his writing was Stand By Me.
Oh, that was a great film. Yeah.
Well, I just read about this the other day about he was blown away. He was shaking in his seat when he saw the preview. So.
Wow, that's cool.
It's a good movie. Great acting in it.
Totally. I think we're still talking about Pet Cemetery. Rod says, I freaking love the character Judd. The first movie was good. The second one was bad. I never saw the second one. Like, I don't think I knew there was a second one. But, well, it's funny. Related to like first movies being great and the second one suck. I keep seeing that the director for Barbie, the movie, was getting pressure to do a second film, and she basically just kept coming back and saying, look, I just need to rest, right? Like, give me a chance to regroup, kind of thing, which I think that's fair, because that film, clearly, that was a lot of work. I mean, it's quite complex. So
yeah, Kathy wants us to see it. She told me that it'll be. I'll get something out of it too. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm ready to deal with pink. That's pretty much all I know about the movie. Is it's a lot of pink.
There is a lot of pink. It's honestly, I had a friend who, when she went to see it, she thought it was, she went into it thinking it was supposed to be a kid's film because it's Barbie, and then quickly realized, oh no, this is really intended purely for adults, because there are a lot of political and social statements throughout the entire thing. So yeah.
Yeah, I like Margot Robbie and I like Ryan Gosling, so that helps.
I actually wasn't a big Ryan Gosling fan before, and then I was like, wait, he actually did this pretty well. Okay, now I get it. Now I understand the Ryan Gosling thing. So, Rod says, I also loved Young Frankenstein. Caroline says, just saw Barbie. Have you seen it? And what did you think? So I saw it. I loved it. And it was actually one of the few films that I saw that I could have literally just gone back and watched it again, because it was that there were so many layers to it. It was so complex, and it had a great pace. Like, I was in a room full of kids as well, like adults and kids, and the kids were thoroughly entertained as well as the adults. So that you don't really find that very frequently. So, especially not with adult themes in it. Rod says, I apologize that my comments lag on my best day. I type 40 words per minute. Well, man, you got to get to it, because if you're in theory a writer, you best be typing like 100 words per minute. Come on, man, get to it. Bing, bing, bing. Caroline says, my husband was not crazy about it. Perhaps not a man thing. And she loved it too. So we're talking about Barbie. It's funny, in the theater, I'd say, I want to say maybe it was like 60% of the men loved it and 40% were like, meh. So I just think part of it depends on what's the mindset you're coming into it. Like, what's your expectation of what it's going to be? And then, whether it delivers that on it or not, you know.
Right.
Because again, like my friend who thought it was going to be a kids movie, she hated it, but that's why, because she thought, oh, this is going to be a kids film, and then was like, whoa, wait, what's going on? Why are they doing that? You know.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
Kathy wants me to see it, so odds are pretty good that I'm going to go see it. So
All right.
I'll give them my review the next time I'm on the call.
Okay, perfect. Now that means Kathy did see it, right?
I think so. I think she saw it when I was out of town.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my husband was like, "You saw it? Oh God." Because I'm not, anyone who knows me, I'm probably not the first person that you would think of to go see a Barbie movie. Like I'm not all Barbie. I don't have my old Barbies from when I was a kid. I'm not, it's not my like my thing. It was just the more that I heard about what it was actually about, and again, like, you know, all the complexity to it and the different social commentaries, I was like, okay, that's actually interesting. I'll give it a shot, you know. So Caroline says, good. Tell us what you think, Peter. Not that you're on the spot again or anything. Nah, not at all.
So so can I read something?
Of course.
This is from one of the teachers that I went with, a visiting teacher at school where I graduated from. Mm-hmm. But try not, it's pretty short. Try not to worry about theme too much. Let it rise up organically in the actions you portray in context, having to do with the trouble your people are in. It's one thing to be thinking of the aboutness of a story, and quite another to be worrying about what it will all mean, mm-hmm. and how others might theorize about what you intended. If you intend to be clear, and it's what Conrad was talking about when he said his primary objective was to make the reader see, most of the rest will take care of itself. So that's something I struggle with all the time. Like, what's this going to mean in 20 years? You know, it's like, no, write the story now and let the rest of it take care of itself. Yeah. If it's good and you put enough work into it, put the time into it, odds are good it will.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I've worked with a couple of our authors where they were coming in, they had a concept or they had an idea. Mm-hmm. But it was clear they were still kind of playing with it within that, whether it was a memoir or a novel or whatever. And so I just sat down and I was like, okay, what's this about? Meaning, like, what's your why, right? What's the intent of this? What are you trying to accomplish? And then that helped them figure out like what the story was really about, so that when they came back with a revision, it was like, my God, this is genius, you know?
That's always fun.
Oh yeah, it's tons of fun. Rod says, my question for today: when you start editing a work, I assume you begin with developmental efforts. Is it hard for you when you know that the best thing to make the book, when you know that the best thing to make the book its best is to dramatically change the storyline? Is it hard for you? Yeah. Is it hard when you know the best thing is to for the book is to dramatically change the storyline? Is it usually hard for the writers too?
Well,
I'm punting to you, dude, because you punted to me. So, I
don't blame you. I have learned that I have to be careful with that. Some writers don't appreciate any excessive in-depth study of their characters, of their writing, of their stories. Personally, I think editors being an outside force. I mean, when I get my stuff edited as well, I listen to what the editor says. But in terms of developmental changes and changes of the storyline or the story arc, I mean, that's something I would have to discuss with the author big time, just so that he and I are on the same page, or she and I are on the same page. Because I like making small suggestions and questions. Big stuff, I got to collaborate, because that's something that I can't dictate. I can't say anything. I won't say anything, but I can suggest verbally or in writing to say, what about this? Or have you thought about this? I mean, I've had writers move stuff around in the story.
Mm.
But to this point, only it's more than Feshly, but not too intense, if that makes sense.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's not. I don't know that it's you come into a story and you know that it needs some dramatic changes. I don't think it's that. It's more when you read the story, you realize the authors trying to accomplish a couple of different things, and they maybe haven't necessarily figured it out either. And so you don't come in with like, "Hey, I've got all the answers. Like, look at me, fancy editor." It's it's
Glenn
coming
does
in.
it, not we don't.
Well, he always does. So,
Exactly.
he's got the genius moves. So, but yeah, no, it's like you go into it, and to Peter's point, I'll intentionally set up a call and say, okay, this is great. Thematically, I noticed these things. What is it that we want at the end of the day that we want the reader to come away with, right? What do we want this story to be? And we just kind of, sometimes the author is like, I want this, right? And it's like, okay, cool. And then we can talk about, because there's never a way to accomplish something. There are hundreds of ways to accomplish something, right?
Exactly.
It's just understanding, like, with this person's writing style, what they're doing with other pieces of the work, how they're leveraging craft in other ways, what options, and again, it's never an option, it's multiple options. What options would actually uh, provide the biggest bang, right? And it would be the most effective. So, it's always just like talking about, all right, like let's just talk through it, and asking them those leading questions so that they go, all right, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. Like I worked with this one author on a memoir, and he was all about like, screw the uh government kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, but what does that have to do with, like, you don't have to be uh explicit about it, right? It can come through your writing implicitly that you're anti, big government, anti big corporation. You don't have to make this a major deal, which I think kind of goes back, Peter, to what you just read from one of your instructors, right? If it's there, it's there, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
come through. And, just allow it to come through. Don't force these things. And it's those authors who get that, who, like, and again, we all do it. We've all done it at some point. I'm sure we'll all continue to do it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
finding that editor or that person that you trust where you can talk through it and figure out, like, holy, oh, this is what it's really about. So,
Right.
I've had authors that I didn't, when we went into it, I didn't think they were going to make major revisions, and they came back with these brilliant, brilliant, like, whole restructurings. And I mean, I was just blown away, but I didn't tell them to do it, right?
I've
So,
had success stories like that as well, where I just could not believe how great the second draft was and how much more polished the third draft, final draft does, just because they just put something that we discussed or something that I wrote or something that she picked up from what I was saying, just blossomed into the rest of the novel and
mm,
fed its way through and became sub themes and themes throughout the story. So, like what you were saying about the hating the government, that could be a theme or it could be a sub theme, which would make it that much more poignant or dramatic, you know?
mm-hmm, totally.
Mm-hmm.
And understand that is not counter to like plotting, right?
Right.
These are
Mm-hmm.
two mutually exclusive things. You can have, like Caroline just wrote, let your characters lead. I so believe in character driven work. You can have your characters lead. You can have them basically tell you where the story should go, and it can be plotted, you know, because I want to say most people who self identify as plotters, what they really do is they're writing notes to themselves of where the story is going to go. And then as the story evolves, they then adjust those plot points so that
Mhm.
it more so reflects what's been written, and then they continue forward. So, and most people who self-identify as pantsers, they're talking about like, I just have a blank page and I have an idea in my head and I have to get it out, right?
Right.
So it's not, none of this is dependent on one another, right? It's all quite complementary.
Mhm. Exactly. One of the things I have issues with sometimes is keeping my characters in trouble, keeping them having to fight for something. I always start out my novels. I mean, I do this every novel, every story. I'm just so damn nice to them, and oh, they were so happy, and this was that, and this was that. And I pull Screech back, way the hell up.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is about trouble. This is not about fun and games. Let's make this interesting.
Mm.
You can't be nice to your characters. You have to keep them in trouble. You can't give them what they want. Not
And
at first.
it's funny because when you do that, right, the reader's like, "Oh, come on, really?"
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless this is like a middle grade or novel, and even then, young adult, man, they get wicked,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, Caroline says you plot as your characters unfold. That's another technique that I know several people who leverage, and I totally get that, right? Like writing out in the from the perspective writing pages from the perspective of a specific character so you discover who that character is, and then taking that knowledge and using that to develop or unfold the actual narrative. I mean, that's another technique that you I it's interesting. I think a lot of authors are doing that when they write pages and pages and pages of stuff that has nothing to do with nothing with the overall narrative, but at the time they feel like it does because they're discovering that character and they're discovering the backstory of that character. And so when they keep reading it, they go back and revise, it still feels right to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have an editor come in and say, you just spent 15 pages talking about this guy's, childhood, but what does this have to do with the overall story? How is this pertinent? How does this enrich it?
Mm-hmm.
And some authors will get that and and recommend to condense it or take it out or whatever. And some authors will get that kind of feedback and they'll say it'll give them that, like, that knock upside the head where they go, oh my god, yeah, you're right. And
Mm-hmm.
others, they've been writing this thing for so long, they just cannot hear it, right? And it's literally painful for them to actually take that feedback and implement it because they're just like, no, 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 the reader needs this. No, 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 you needed it. You needed it. And it's fabulous, but it has nothing to do with nothing in terms of the overall, the narrative itself. So,
Yeah, I mean, I've known authors, have been heard of authors who do extensive character study. Just before they even write the book, they just do pages and pages and pages of the characters just to find who they are, just to dig into them, see what's going on. And then they start the work. Then they start the story because they know these characters so well. They know how they're going to react for the most part, that they're going in with all this information and all this world, all these worlds coming together as one. And it just makes the story that much more vibrant and just explosive. It's just a neat technique.
mm,
But I want to go try that sometimes. Sometime.
I, I actually, what I want to do for we're going to start working on the third novel for Cure, meaning actually like plotting it out. I want to go to the country that it's going to be set in, and so that I get a deeper. And now, mind you, I want to say, have I been to all the countries? I've been to, yeah, I've been so far. I've been to the countries that have been used in Cure and in uh,
Family
up,
members.
upcoming family pack. Yeah.
Family pack.
Um, but I want to make sure that because that we continue to have it where you know I've actually experienced that culture of that country, and so that I can bring it forward because the mythology often, which so and for anyone who doesn't know, uh, the Cure and Family Pack both, I use a lot of mythology in it. That's like the core of the story, and um I combine mythology with history that is then combined with well, lycanthropes, and then a whole nother sub world that's put into it. Anyway, I until you've been to that country and you, in my opinion, you've been to that country and you've experienced that um society, that culture, oftentimes you don't really understand where the mythology is coming from, because all of it is based in, true happenings, right? And like there's a reason that uh like and this isn't mythology, but like Puerto Rico has their rock scene was hugely rebellious, and very much like an fu, and it's because the government was so incredibly corrupt, and it was so structured where either you had like nothing and everybody lived on the streets, or you were a billionaire, and there was no middle class, right? And it became clear that over and over again, so that fu um uh mindset became quite prominent within the music and the stories that were brought forward
Mhm.
during, like, I want to say the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Well, that's going to be true. That's true as well within the mythology of any country, right? It's a reflection of what trauma was going on within that
Mhm.
world.
Right.
So, but you can't necessarily know that unless you actually go in and you know experience it, or like talk to the people, like that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so
It's
I
gonna
I,
help.
I need to pick a country. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's just gonna pull out a risk board. Um, what I was gonna say was this harkens back to our conversation at the beginning of the show. Is that dialogues are different, land is
Mm,
different, people are different, mythologies are different. I mean, even within the United States and all the different areas that we mentioned, plus many more. It's just really interesting to see, and you really want to see what's going on in these and have an idea what's going on before you plant yourself down in them. Because we're bringing up the argument of write what you know as opposed to write what you don't know. There's
mhm.
arguments for both, but at least have an idea. I would want to have an idea of what the environment was like, what the dialogue is like, what the people are like before I can actually paint a true picture. Like I can
Absolutely.
write about Chicago, no problem at all, but New York is something that I would have to has to spend some time there, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But
Well, and if it's something where you're going down the historic road, sitting
mhm,
down and talking to people from that, space, like, um, I wrote a character that has PTSD. So, well, I don't necessarily personally want to experience PTSD, although I know I have, but you want to talk to people who have experienced something like that, or who were part of that culture during that time period, or whatever it is, right?
mhm,
Do
right,
that due diligence, do that research, because it's so much more rewarding and so much more enriching than simply doing a Google search and saying, like, what was New York like in 1980, right? Because you're going to get a lot of cliches. You're going to get a lot of like pat responses versus, even just asking around with your friends and family. Hey, do we know anybody? Is there anybody within our network
mhm,
who, lived in New York in the 1980s? And you'd be shocked at the kind of stuff that you can find out. So,
exactly.
wow. So with that, I can't believe it. We're uh, at the end of our time.
Wow,
Um,
happening.
Again, yeah, you guys are awesome. I mean, Peter's always fantastic. Caroline, Rod, Margaret, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cree. It is so awesome to see you guys. And again, for anyone who's watching, if this is oh good, I now have a dog in my lap. How did you know I was finishing something? Yes, of course. Um, just go ahead and pop your questions in the comments section, and we will be more than happy to respond the next time. So until then, thanks, guys. Awesome to see you. Ciao.
See you guys.